Every 2 years, the world experiences another battle of Olympic sport, of nationalism and corporate invasion. Host cities are required to pump billions of dollars into the Olympic budget, though it's the local communities that suffer the highest impacts of the Games.
In 2003, the city of Vancouver and the village of Whistler in British Columbia won the bid to host the 2010 Winter Olympic Games. Since then, the cost to taxpayers has tripled, the environment has been devastated, Indigenous lands continue to be stolen, and homelessness is spiraling out of control. In response, a movement opposed to these devastating impacts has emerged. Over the past 3 years, this movement has carried out many successful campaigns and direct actions that expose the Olympics for what they are.
The Olympics are not about the human spirit and have little to do with athletic excellence. In reality, they are a multi-billion-dollar industry backed by powerful elites. Real estate, construction, hotel, tourism, and media corporations working hand in hand with government officials and members of the International Olympic Committee. Their main goal is massive economic growth despite the negative impacts on people, communities, and the land.
The modern Olympics have a long history of racism, from early founding members to recent IOC presidents. The 1936 Berlin Games empowered Hitler's Nazi regime, and both the 1988 Seoul and the 2008 Beijing Games helped legitimize authoritarian regimes. The 1968 Games in Mexico City were preceded by a massacre of over 300 student protesters just days before the opening ceremonies. IOC President Avery Brundage, an infamous Nazi sympathizer, never acknowledged the massacre, but days later stripped 2 U.S. athletes of their medals for raising their fists in the air in a Black Power salute. Another well-known fascist was Juan Antonio Samaranch, formerly a Spanish government official in Francisco Franco's regime. He was president of the IOC until 2001.
British Columbia remains largely unceded and unsurrendered Indigenous territories. Under Canadian and international law, the province has no legal or moral right to exist, let alone claim land title and govern over Native peoples. Despite this, and an ongoing fraudulent treaty process, the government continues to sell, lease, and develop Native land for the benefit of corporate resource extraction and ski resorts.
No Olympics on stolen Native land!
In order to pacify Indigenous resistance, Indian Act chiefs and councillors have been brought into the Olympic industry, including those of the 4 host First Nations. These Native business elites are contributing to homelessness and ecological destruction in exchange for prestige and profits.
Despite promises of the greenest Olympics ever, the 2010 Games will be among the most environmentally destructive in history. Already, 100,000 trees have been cut for the Sea to Sky Highway expansion and Olympic venues in Whistler, resulting in habitat loss for sensitive animal and bird species. The 2010 Olympic Games will generate more than 3.7 million tons of carbon emissions.
Since winning the bid in 2003, the City of Vancouver's homeless rates have increased by 370%. The 2007 Fair Play for Housing Rights report claims over 2 million people have been displaced by the Olympic Games in the various host cities since the 1980s. In addition, host cities routinely begin campaigns to criminalize the poor. In Vancouver, Project Civil City was launched. This project featured strict new bylaws targeting panhandling, street vending, and sleeping outdoors, in essence criminalizing being poor. With thousands of impoverished people less than 1 kilometer from the venue of the opening ceremonies, the picture begins to look like nothing less than social cleansing.
Mega events such as the Olympics draw hundreds of thousands of spectators and cause increases in prostitution and trafficking of women. In Vancouver, over 68 women are missing and or murdered. Most of these women are Native and were reportedly involved in the sex trade. In northern BC, over 30 young women, mostly Native, are missing and or murdered along Highway 16, also known as the Highway of Tears. The 2010 Olympics and its invasion of tourists and corporations will increase this violence against women.
Some 15,000 police, military, and security personnel will be deployed for 2010, along with 40 kilometers of crowd control fencing, CCTV surveillance cameras, and special security zoning around Olympic venues. For 3 weeks, Vancouver will effectively be an occupied police state. To date, there have been attacks on Olympic resistance groups, arrests of protesters, office raids, extensive surveillance, and media smear campaigns, all to undermine 2010 resistance. The security budget for the 2010 Winter Games is over $900 million.
The original budget of $2 billion put forward by the Vancouver Organizing Committee for 2010 didn't include the Sea to Sky Highway expansion, the SkyTrain line to the airport, or the new convention center. These projects were necessary to win the bid and will be completed by 2010, bringing the tab up to $6 billion in public debt, not including a security budget that continues to skyrocket.
Governments and business use the Olympics as a means to attract corporate investment. In BC, the Liberal government has streamlined application processes, cut taxes, and offered other incentives to increase certain industries such as mining, oil and gas, and ski resorts. This includes large increases in transportation systems, including new ports, bridges, expanded highways, and rail lines. This is all part of their investment to 2010 strategy. The results have been dramatic, with record-breaking increases in these industries, resulting in greater environmental destruction and more corporate power and influence over our daily lives. Many of the main corporate sponsors of the Olympics are themselves responsible for ecological destruction and human rights violations, including McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Petro-Canada, and TransCanada, while others are major arms manufacturers like General Electric, General Motors, and Bombardier.